Bonjour, everyone. This is Sue from Sue is Retiring to France on a Shoestring, and it is a lovely, incredibly warm December day in Central Texas. It is 81 degrees Fahrenheit where I live right now, which is absolutely absurd. I don't want it to be pipe freezing cold, but this is just too hot for winter for my tastes. So yet another reason I don't want to move to any coastal area that would have this kind of winter weather. It just doesn't set with this Midwestern girl who likes her winters. So that said, the reason I am doing this video today is that I have started to tell more friends and family about my plans to move to France next year. I've kept it pretty quiet for the most part, simply because it's a little too early. And I know that some of my family did freak out, and probably others not so much. But the ones that I waited to say something, yeah. So I just didn't want that to be like, something that was disconcerting. But along with telling people who had no idea, now people who are on my Instagram account, they all know. And of course, you guys all know. But a lot, I would say probably 90% of my connections had no idea or still have no idea. And so that will be something I will be working on to inform everybody over the next couple of weeks and months. And I get the same questions again and again. And I kind of went through some of these, I think, in one of my initial videos. But I wrote down a list of questions or points to consider if you too are thinking of making a monster move. And that doesn't necessarily have to be overseas. It can be within the same country. It can be within the same state. It can be within the same city if you decide that you are moving to a different part of town that you just are not familiar with. But the first question you want to ask yourself is why? Why do I want to make a move? And it's important to make sure that you are making a move to do something towards something you want to do. That you have a goal or a wish or a dream or a plan of what you are moving towards, and not simply making a big change because you want to avoid something. Now, I'm sure in some instances that's appropriate, but not for a move like this. So one of the questions I've been getting is, well, what are you leaving for? Does it have to do with the election? No, it doesn't have to do with the election. That is certainly a factor that made me decide to move my trip up from September to May, but it had absolutely zero influence on me making this decision. And I think that when people ask that kind of question, if it's coming from friends and family, that's one thing. But if it's coming from complete strangers, I think it says a lot more about them and their unhappiness with their life, that they immediately have a knee-jerk reaction or a defensive reaction about somebody making a change for the better for their own life, when maybe they don't know that they're unhappy, or they know that they're unhappy, but they don't know what to do about it, or they know that they're unhappy and they just want to make everybody else miserable. And I think there's a lot of those people out there in the world right now. So that's the first question that anybody making a big move like this needs to ask. Why am I doing this? What am I going towards? I know what I'm going towards. I'm 65. I don't have a lot of really good travel or probably really good physical years left. Maybe I'll live to a long age, but even if I do, the likelihood of me having the energy and the physical capacity and the mental capacity to do all the things I still want to do 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or later than that is just not going to happen. I mean, it's a nice pipe dream, but it just doesn't happen for the majority of people. That's why when you see stories of seniors who are in their 90s and 100s who are doing amazing things, it makes the news because it's an amazing thing. It is not the norm. So again, go back to your why. Why do you want to do this? Second thing you need to consider is, what type of climate do you want to live in? What kind of weather do you hate? What kind of weather do you love? What kind of weather are you? You don't really care either way. Okay. And what type of hobbies do you like to do? For example, I like 4 seasons. I love going to the beach at times, but over the years, I have turned much more into a mountain person, and I absolutely love hiking. I used to backpack a lot. Those days are kind of gone too. For no other reason than I have absolutely zero interest in lying in an uncomfortable air mattress on the dirt in the cold or the heat. It was an awful lot of fun when I was doing it, but no, those days are gone. I'm more into glamping. If I were to be glamping at this point in time, which maybe I will. Maybe I will go glamping to Lake Como in Italy next year or the year after that, or up to Norway or down to Portugal. Who knows? It could happen, right? But it will be glamping. It will not be laying on an air mattress in a tent. So I want to travel. I've always wanted to travel, mostly in Europe. I've never been really that interested in traveling to Southeast Asia. I did go to New Zealand and I loved it. I would love to go back there if I have the opportunity at some point. I would love to go to Australia and explore that country at some point. May or may not happen at this juncture, but there are a gazillion countries in Europe that I haven't explored. I've been to Greece, I've been to France, and that's pretty much it. So, with a heritage that is Scottish, Swedish, Welsh, Dutch, French, and English, I have a lot of places to start with, let alone all the other places that I would like to go to that everybody wants to go to, like Italy. And I'd love to check out some of the wonderful Schengen area countries on the Adriatic Sea. So climate is important. I'm looking for a place that has, as I said, the 4 seasons. Maybe there'll be some really, over the top hot days in the summer, maybe a week or two on end. Same thing in the wintertime. I'm totally fine with that. I like exploring different things at different seasons. And one thing I don't know if it's a thing in the Alps or in the Pyrenees, I'll more likely be near the Pyrenees, is snowshoeing. I really miss snowshoeing from my days in Oregon. And I really hope that that's a thing over in Europe. If not, well, then I'm going to make it a thing. I'll figure out how to do that. Next thing you want to think of, do you want to live in an urban setting? Do you want to live in a rural setting? Small town, medium-sized town, all that kind of stuff. I don't want to live in a big city simply because I've done that before and I've really, really enjoyed it. I have lived in suburbs of big cities. I have lived kind of in outer ring neighborhoods in big cities, and I have lived in totally downtown, in-town neighborhoods in cities, and absolutely loved all three of those experiences. But these last 4.5, almost 5 years now, 12 miles out in the country from my dinky little town of 6,000 people, I love it. And so a smaller town or even a larger village in France is ideal for me. Although I think I would love being completely rural or being in a very, very tiny town. I don't think that that's really, I don't want to say a wise choice, but it's really not a practical choice for me because I am learning French. I will still be learning French when I move over there. And to live in a neighborhood or an enclave that small, you'd really have to be, whether it's France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, you name it, Greece, any country, you'd really, really need to be adept at the language in order to get by on a regular basis. Now, of course, you're going to learn a lot faster because you are, basically into the what do they say, into the frying pan or something like that. So you'd have to learn it a lot faster. But I'm totally comfortable with a town or village somewhere between maybe 2,000 and maybe 20,000. That's pretty much what I'm kind of targeting right now. So we'll see, right? And I touched on just very briefly, another thing you need to consider is the language skills, your language skills. Are you interested in learning another language, or do you already know another language? Are you fairly adept in maybe Spanish or French or German? At least when I was in high school, we had French, German, and Spanish. We might have also had Latin. I did take 2 years of Latin in junior high school. So I think that that's one of the reasons that when I was taking Spanish, of course, in high school, that was the one I wanted to take. And then now learning French and having taught myself some Portuguese, it hasn't been as difficult because of that Latin base. So, do you want to live someplace where you can just speak 100% your native tongue? Do you want to speak English and not have to worry about ever speaking another language, except for fun if you want to order a croissant or a cafe or a pizza, which of course is the exact same word, at least in French it is. So think about that. Are you going to go someplace? There's some beautiful places right now, like Albania, Romania, Bulgaria, some absolutely beautiful places with incredible cost of living. And that's a huge language jump for probably 99% of people. So think that one through too. Tax situation. One of the things that is most appealing to me about France is that France has a tax treaty with the United States, which means that I will be paying tax on my Social Security income. And if and when, because there will become a when, I do start withdrawing money from my 401k, some of that may or may not be taxed, but it will all be taxed in the United States. The exact same if I was living here in Texas or if I'm living in a village in France. France does not double tax. That was very important to me. Portugal used to have a visa that they discontinued at the end of 2023. And I always get it wrong. I want to say it's NFT, but I don't think that that's it because that's non-fungible token. But it's something like that, NHT. I think maybe that's it. They had a visa that was much more tax friendly to people that were not interested necessarily in buying or plunking down money as an investment into the country. But that went away. And so Portugal is still an amazing place. I'm kind of sad that it turned out that that's not going to be the place for me. But at the same time, it's going to be probably a day trip, maybe an overnight trip from where I plan or where I think I'll probably end up landing in France. So I can't wait. I think that'll be marvelous to go on weekend trips to Portugal and Spain and Italy. Yeah, so think of the tax situation. Just a little aside to that too. I don't have enough funds in my retirement to be able to purchase a dwelling. I have the funds, but it would be too tight of a fit for me. I'm not interested in having to live that close to the vest. So I will be a long-term renter. And if you're interested in moving to another country and purchasing, you need to look into the laws they have regarding real estate. One example is in France, if you are over 60, it's highly unlikely that you would get a mortgage. So the majority of people, regardless if they're over 60 or not, it seems to me that are moving from the UK, possibly Australia, and from the US, they are plunking down money that they have gained from the sale of real estate, and they are putting that down, basically buying a house for cash, a dwelling for cash. But with that French standard of not writing mortgages for people over 60, their system is completely different than the United States. Again, all countries are going to be completely different. So that's something you really have to look into. You can't just say, oh, I want to move to Italy and buy a house. You really got to look into this stuff. In France, and I don't disagree with it, they don't want to issue mortgages to somebody who may not live as long as the mortgage is. So why would they want to write a mortgage for 15 or 20 years to, say, a 70-year-old? The person might not make it. So it's, again, a totally different mindset, a totally different system. So that kind of goes, it's not really with taxes. Maybe I should have just called this tax section money, okay? Income requirements. So it also kind of ties into money. Different countries have different requirements for you to be able to get a visa or to reside into that country. France is one of the lowest threshold countries for that. Next year, I just did the math the other day for a friend. So if I'm a little bit fuzzy on this and off, forgive me, but this is what's sticking in my head, is that as of November 2024, so last month, the French minimum wage went up, but it's about the equivalent of $1,700 a month. So I just need to prove to France for a visa, for a long stay visa, meaning more than just coming over on your passport, and more than a short-term visa, which is less than a year, and then you have to go away. You can always do another visa, but you have to go back to your home country and do another visa. Whereas with a long stay visa, that's exactly what it means. You're there long term. Once you're in the country and it's getting a couple of months close to the end of your visa period, you reapply to stay in the country. And if you meet all the requirements again, then chances are you'll be approved to remain. The French requirements are that I just have to prove that I have the monthly income equivalent of $1,700 American or more. And you can do that with Social Security payments, pension payments, other types of income payments. Like, say, for example, if somebody had an annuity, any kind of savings, any kind of brokerage account, retirement account, you name it, any kind of account that shows the French government that, yeah, you can take care of yourself. You're not coming over here and you're not going to be a ward of the state. You can take care of yourself for a year. And although I am coming over there as a retiree, and I don't know that much about the requirements for people who are working, so don't look to me for that kind of information. But as I understand it, if you're going over there on a visa that allows you to work in the country, then you also have to meet that threshold of whatever income you have is enough to sustain you in the French system for an annual period, a year. And then, of course, re-up that as well. Another thing that I am learning about secondhand from people right now is patience with bureaucracy. The French are apparently masters at bureaucracy when it comes to anything with moving into the country, well, probably just about everything. So of the different Facebook and other social groups that I have joined, it sounds like there is no stone unturned in the country that is not affected by learning the value of patience and kindness and being able to just roll with the punches. I think a lot about that at times because younger me, even me a couple of years ago, even me probably this time last year, due to just the toxic work environment that I was in, I felt that I was a lot more irritable about certain types of things. I would snap at people for certain types of things if I had been snapped at, right? So patience is a virtue that maybe finally in my dotage, I am starting to exhibit and cultivate. So yay me. Another thing is the visa requirements. I touched on that a little teeny bit. There are various different requirements for different types of visas, and you really need to stick to the requirements for each of them in any country that you're moving to, so that you can stay in the country and not get kicked out. And I can't imagine the pain of moving to a country that you are really excited about exploring and immersing yourself in the culture and the language, and you decide to take some shortcuts, which Americans are notorious for, and then getting caught up in a system that maybe isn't as flexible or as willing to forgive. So it really behooves someone, if they're looking to move to another country, to really dig into the requirements for that country on that country's website about moving to the country, about what are the requirements, what are the visa requirements, what are the banking requirements. Again, I mentioned mortgage before. Real estate is very different there. They don't have a national system, like an MLS, like they do in a multiple listing service in the United States. It's much more local and sometimes regional, but pretty much local. So it's a totally different ball game when you're looking to find a place to live. Again, if you want to buy or rent, I touched on that already. Make that decision. I already know that I'm going to be renting. If I were to buy something, I would be buying something so dirt cheap that it would need so much renovation. And I love renovating, absolutely love renovating. I've done it many times throughout my life, but again, at 65, I just think that I need to be spending my time doing travel and playing with my dogs and going to markets and checking out all sorts of different cultural sites and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So those are all of the big points that I have been talking about with my friends and family the last couple of weeks, and which I will over the next couple of weeks. I almost feel now that I have this down kind of in my head and I put all these points on a piece of paper that you might have seen me looking over to the right a little bit times. I feel that maybe I should get them all together and do a series of webinars so that they can go through all this. But maybe that's just my my work brain still poking up from time to time when I'm doing something like this that is organized and timely. Two things I haven't had to necessarily be since I've been retired, which again is absolutely fabulous, not having to be. Sorry, I'm getting in the left turn lane and it's beeping at me, even though there's nobody else around that I could even hit if I wanted to. I'm on my way to the gym. It's been really fun the last 2 weeks. This is my fifth day. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, sixth day that I am getting my muscles back in shape, and I've really enjoyed it. Plus, it gives me this half hour of time driving through the countryside to put my thoughts together and to do a video and not just sit at my laptop at my desk, which feels sometimes like work. Not that doing the video and communicating with y'all feels like work. It's just sitting at that desk, sitting on that chair. Maybe what I should do is just hurry up and go ahead and sell those early in the year. Oh, one other update. If you have checked out my last video, I need to get shoulder surgery on my left shoulder. And it was originally planned for January 3rd, but I realized over the weekend that it's doable. But I don't really want to be focusing on my 2-week trip to France, the first 2 weeks of February, on making sure that I have sleeping accommodations that will support a 3.5 week old surgery, and just all the other things that could happen, jostling, bumping into things unintentionally, just all sorts of things that could go wrong that I don't want to go wrong. I really want to just focus on being in France when I'm in France and enjoying that. And then when I get back home, I've moved the surgery to February 21st, and then I will finish my last physical therapy appointment May 19th, which will then be literally 2 weeks before I get in a plane and head to France. So I guess it's meant to be, right? Thanks for joining me today. If you are so inclined, I would love it if you would like this video, if you got any value out of it or any humor. Of course, I'd love it if people subscribe. So that's it. I hope that wherever you are having a lovely day. A bonjour, a bonsoir, bonne nuit, and I will see you all again soon. Au revoir.